Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the session. We will get started in just a minute. There's still a handful of people who are coming over from the lobby. So give us just a minute and we'll get started. All right, welcome to our session. We may have a couple more people who join us as we get going, but we're going to, in the interest of time, go ahead and get started with our webinar today. This webinar is from Tax 1099, and we're going to talk about some of the BOI reporting essentials that you may need to know in order to accurately e-file your beneficial owner information reports. So we are Tax 1099. I myself am Ed Pratt. I am co-founder and chief operating officer here at Zenwork. Zenwork is the parent company of Tax 1099, among other cloud-based compliance softwares. I've been doing compliance things for the last 25 years, whether that's in tax or HR or payroll. And for about the last 11 years, I've been here at Zenwork. Prior to that, I spent about 10 years at ADP. And then prior to that, I was at a division of PricewaterhouseCoopers. So been around a little bit. Currently living in Maryland, but I've also lived just in the time that I've been with Zenwork in the last 11 years, two different places in Arkansas, one place in Milwaukee, and also in Pennsylvania. So I move around a bit, hoping to settle in a little bit here, though we have family in the Maryland area. A quick disclaimer, so anything that we present in this session today is geared towards providing you information about doing the BOI filing. It's not supposed to be considered as tax, legal, or accounting advice, so do please seek some other assistance, some professional guidance on those types of questions that you may have. With that in mind, though, I do want you to ask questions as we go through the session. There is a Q&A panel in the Zoom toolbar, so click on that. Ask us a question in there. I will handle the questions as we get to the end of the session. I will say, though, that I've been doing these webinars since in March or April, and sometimes I get questions that are very particular. I have a situation where this and that and the other, and sometimes I won't answer those questions, or I'll give a more generalized answer to them, just because, again, don't want to be providing the type of advice that that you might be relying on for doing your filing. The slides that you will see today are available in a PDF version in the handout section. That's under the resources tab in your Zoom toolbar as well. So click in there, go into the handout component of that, and you should be able to see the slides for today's session. And then Zoom will automatically send a recording of this session to you for upkeep later if you want to come back and look at any of the information that we covered during today's session. So what are we going to cover in today's session? First, we're going to answer the question, do I have to comply with the BOI? What is the BOI? Why? All that type of stuff. We're gonna contend with those types of questions in the first part of our webinar today. Just the basics of what it is and who needs to do the BOI report filing. We'll also talk about deadlines. Anytime there is a compliance component that is required, deadlines are going to be important. The deadlines help you avoid the penalties, which are coming up in the next section after that. There are some pretty steep penalties for not complying with the BOI mandate. And then we'll look inside of Tax 1099 and talk about how to file the BOI report inside of Tax 1099. It's a pretty simple process. If you've been using Tax 1099 in the past, you already have some of the information there. Even if you haven't, it's a pretty easy process to add that information and then do the completed filing for any of your particular reporting companies that you may need. And then at the end of the session, we'll have a quick question and answer segment at the end. And I won't get into questions now. I'll just look at those questions as we get to the end. So please do ask your question now, because if you don't, you may forget it. But I will probably look to answer the questions as we get to the end of the session. All right, a little bit of background on the BOI report itself. So there was a law passed a few years ago called the Corporate Transparency Act. And the Corporate Transparency Act directed the Department of Treasury to find out who owns businesses in the United States or businesses that are doing business within the United States, even if they are businesses that are established under a foreign jurisdiction. So the Department of Treasury has a division called the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And it is, just like it says, responsible for looking into potential financial crimes and enforcing the laws related to those financial crimes. We here at ZenWork have been working with FinCEN for a number of years, not in regards to BOI because it didn't exist until recently, but in regards to something called the Foreign Bank Account Report. There was a Foreign Bank Account Reporting Act that was done a number of years ago, and there's a FinCEN Form 114, I think is the name of the form. But it's basically just to state if I am a U.S. person, do I have funds in a bank account overseas that hits a $10,000 threshold at any point in time in the year? And if I do, I need to report that as part of my my tax reportings during the course of the year. It's got an April 15th due date, just like my personal 1040 does. So this naturally fits in with the BOI reporting as well. It's something that the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network is used to doing. They're used to looking at ways to combat money laundering or combat money going to terrorist organizations like Hamas or Hezbollah or one of those types of groups. Even foreign actors, so Iran, Russia, people who are under sanctions from the United States government for various reasons. We are not supposed to do business with those entities or with entities that are owned by those individuals. The problem comes in with knowing who is the individual who actually owns something for one of those businesses, because you'll see a very innocuous looking name, whatever it is, Ed's Carpet Cleaning, right? A very, very kind of bland name, but at the end of that, there may be some criminal who is the owner of that organization. The BOI report, again, was introduced a few years ago by the Corporate Treasury Act, but it really is something that other countries have been doing for a number of years now. We often see them referred to as an ultimate beneficial owner, UBO, instead of BOI, but it's the same thing. It is designating or determining who is the ultimate beneficial owner of any type of entity that is doing business for us in the United States. So who is the beneficial owner? And there's really two things that go into that. There's ownership or control of an asset, business, or other entity. And I'm going to lean on the control here for just a minute, because I may not own the company, but I may be the person who's in charge, the CEO, the president, the person who's day-to-day making the decisions for that business. By virtue of me being in control of that company, I am a beneficial owner, even if I don't have enough of an ownership stake, and we'll see what that is in just a minute. So those two elements have to be considered when you're looking at, am I, or if you're an accountant or a legal professional, are my clients owning or controlling an asset? And that asset, then, that business, that entity, needs to be registered within a within a Secretary of State or other type of jurisdiction in the US, or a similar foreign type of jurisdiction. So if I have a pass-through entity that I haven't registered anywhere, I'm selling things on eBay, and so I make a few $1,000s a year. I just include it in my income statements as I'm going through and filling out my 1040, doing an SE on that. Then I am not responsible for doing a BOI report. It's only when I have created a what's called a reporting company and put that company into play at a jurisdiction where that is being tracked, like a Secretary of State. So keep in mind ownership and control. When we look at ownership, it's a fairly easy designation here. It's a 25% threshold is what is generally used to determine a beneficial ownership. Now, that could be 25% or more, right? If I own Ed's Carpet Cleaning and I am the only person who's involved in it, then I am a 100% owner of Ed's Carpet Cleaning. I am the only beneficial owner who is needing to be considered and reported for that. If, though, I'm wanting to pass it on to my kids at some point in time in the future. And I bring my oldest child in, she's 29 now. So if I bring her in to be an owner with me and share it equally 50-50, then we both are beneficial owners and need to be reported. So your varying types of ownership structure, whether it's an LLC, whether it's an S Corp, a C Corp, any of those may be qualified and needing to be reported as a beneficial owner situation. But keep in mind the 25% threshold, but also keep in mind the control, right? I could have a situation where I have a partnership. We have 10 partners. Everybody owns it equally. That's 10%. None of us qualify for the threshold of 25%. However, those of us who are in charge of making the day-to-day decisions, could be all 10 of us, it could just be two of us. We could have a CEO and a president. Then the CEO and the president, if they're the ones making those daily determinations of what the business is going to do, how we're going to invest, what types of markets we're going to go after, sharing out the profits, we're making those determinations, then the two of us would need to be reported. So it can be a little tricky depending on the structure, but many of the companies in the US are, that kind of sole member LLC that's registered with the Secretary of State, and they are then going to be just the only beneficial owner that gets reported in that case. So when you are reporting a beneficial owner, there is specific information that's required to identify that beneficial owner. And you can think about it like the same types of things that go into creating a bank account. So if I want to create a bank account, I can't just, go over to Nations Bank or to PNC and say, hey, give me an account. Here's $100. They're going to ask me questions. They're going to take my driver's license. They're going to ask me to fill out a form. They want my social security number. They want my address. They want that type of identifying information. Same thing with the beneficial owner report. There is going to be ownership information that's going to need to be reported for that individual to identify that particular individual. There will also be a collection of a driver's license or a passport, some type of document that contains the identifying information about that individual that can be relayed and rolled up into FinCEN so that FinCEN has access to that information. There's another component called a company applicant. The company applicant may or may not be the beneficial owner. The company applicant is the person who prepared and filed the creation or the registration document with the Secretary of State or the tribal jurisdiction or the foreign version of the Secretary of State. Whoever the person was that did that is called a company applicant. We're going to go in and see where the company applicant falls into place as part of the reporting structure here in a minute. But if you don't know this information, there are companies that were created 150 years ago that are still going concerns in the United States. And so I don't know who created this company 150 years ago. That's going to be okay for the initial reporting period. So don't worry too much about the company applicant. We'll see how it comes into play with the initial reporting that we're going to do here in just a minute. I say a minute. It'll be more like 30 minutes, but still, we'll get there. So now let's look at kind of understanding that framework of the BOI. Let's look and see if we can determine if your organization falls under the BOI mandate. And you see BOI, I'm saying BOI, it's BOIR. The R is the report, BOI is the beneficial owner information. So the reporting company is that entity that has been registered by the creation of, by filing a document with the Secretary of State or some other type of similar office. So that's the first question. Do I have a reporting company? If I don't have a reporting company, I'm not under the BOI mandate. So you got to have that first qualification first. Then I need to look, if I do have a reporting company, is my reporting company domestic or foreign? That's pretty easy to determine. If it's domestic, then it was organized and reported, registered within the United States, whether that's a state jurisdiction or a tribal jurisdiction. Or if it's a foreign company, then it was doing business in the US, but it was formed under the laws of a foreign country. So, we had a question come up through our support team just a couple of days ago, and the user was asking, I've got an owner. The owner lives in India, but the business was registered in the state of Texas. So is this a domestic reporting company or is it a foreign reporting company? Well, it's a domestic reporting company. The individual owner is a foreign person, but the reporting company itself was a domestic reporting company because it was registered in the state of Texas. So just looking at that, keep it in mind, most of the companies that you work with, if you're an accountant or an attorney, are going to be domestic reporting companies, but there is the option to choose the foreign reporting company as you go through and you create the BOI report. Now, whenever something like this is created, there are often exemptions that come into play. There are categories of businesses that are not responsible for doing the BOI report in this case. And you can see here in the first section of this list, there'll be a second slide here in just a minute, but in the first section of this list, these are financial institutions, banks, credit unions, money services businesses, broker-dealers. Those types of people are under scrutiny from other organizations already, whether it's the SEC or any other type of government regulation. They're under pretty heavy scrutiny already. So they're exempted from doing the BOI report because there are other laws in place that work towards having them report who is their owner, what is their ownership structure like. Continuing on to the next slide here, there's 23 of these. I know number 13, we missed the 13 there, but there are 23 of these different ones. And as you look here, some of these are still in the investment and banking type of industry. Some of them are insurance companies. There's accounting firms that are not required to do the filing. Those are accounting firms that are involved in audit and SOC, SEC type of stuff. Not necessarily just a tax filing accounting firm, but specific types of accounting firms that deal with particular types of legal filings and statements for SEC purposes. Also, public utilities. There are also inactive entities. So if I created a business 20 years ago and, maybe it didn't go well and I just kind of didn't do anything else with it for a while, I haven't, gone out to the Secretary of State. I haven't renewed my certificate of good standing. I haven't done any of those types of things. It's an inactive entity and it doesn't need to be reported. Also, tax-exempt entities, number 19 there. So tax-exempt entities do need to be a 501c3 type of organization or any other type of official designation of a tax-exempt entity. I can't just create a nonprofit and say, hey, I'm tax-exempt. It doesn't work like that. It does have to be a true tax-exempt entity to qualify for that. There's also an exclusion for a certain category of members of the National Small Business Association. So when the CTA, the Corporate Transparency Act, was created a few years ago, like anything that comes out that is a new regulation requirement, there's always going to be lawsuits that go, and people are going to say, I shouldn't have to do this because of whatever reason. In this case, the National Small Business Association filed a lawsuit claiming that the Corporate Transparency Act is unconstitutional. As of March of this year, there was a federal judge in Alabama who said, yeah, I can get behind that. And that judge ruled that the CTA was not able to be enforced and stayed the ruling, though, only put the ruling into effect for the 40,000 members of the National Small Business Association. So even if you have a business that's registered in Alabama, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to file the BOI. It's only if you are a member of the National Small Business Association. So keep this in mind. You'll hear more about this as we go forward. Depending on what happens, we just had an election recently, and that changes over, who's in charge of the Justice Department, who's in charge of following up on these types of rulings. And so when that ruling works its way through, because it's under appeal right now by the government saying, yes, we should have to do this BOI report, just keep an eye on it. At some point in time in the next year or so, maybe the Supreme Court rules and says, no, we're not going to do this. Or maybe the Supreme Court rules and says, yes, this is applicable and we need to know this information to prevent foreign actors from doing dangerous and bad things. So a couple of examples here, actually 4 examples. Sole proprietorship. So this is an LLC that was created with the Secretary of State. This person has a consulting business. She's the only one who owns and controls the business, and therefore she is under the BOI mandate. She has to file a BOI report and state that she is the owner and controller of that particular sole proprietorship. Partnership. I talked about this as well. Like if I bring my daughter on, in this case, it's John and Alice. They own a firm together. They share the ownership, the control, and the profits. And so both of them need to be reported. Doesn't matter what percentage it is, right? It could be Alice who owns 70% and John owns 30%. Both of them need to be reported. Alice owns 90%, John owns 10% because they both control the business. They both need to be reported. Could be a 50-50 split. You're not reporting the split of the business when you're doing the BOI report. You don't say, Ed owns 100% or Alice owns 90% and John owns 10%. You're just stating that these are the people who are the beneficial owners of the company. There's also a corporation example. So if I have several shareholders in the business, anyone who owns more than 25%, or anyone who is controlling that organization. We could have, a dozen shareholders and each of them owns an equal share, but one of them is the CEO. That one person is the person who's going to need to be reported because of the control of the daily operations of the business. And then the last example is a holding company. So holding companies come into play here because sometimes it could be for good reasons or bad reasons, right? But sometimes a holding company exists that just owns other businesses. The holding company could just exist to be a gathering of smaller businesses or even big businesses, but they are gathered under the umbrella of the holding company. Well, if I own the holding company and the holding company owns another company, then I own the other company. I need to be reported as the owner of that company as well. Even if I'm holding the ownership of the holding company, I'm not participating in the day-to-day decisions of the businesses at the lower level. Even so, if I own the percentage here, 75% of the holding company, and that holding company owns 100% of the down the line business, then I effectively own 75% of that business, and I need to be reported as the beneficial owner. So those holding company configurations can get to be a little lengthy. I saw a similar function to this from China. A presentation one time, someone was demonstrating some software where within the country of China, they have a ultimate beneficial owner reporting structure, and this company had gone in and deciphered this person who owned this business and this business, this business, this business, which owned this business and this business. It was just a chain of it's like a pyramid structure, a pyramid scheme, basically, to try to mask the ownership by going through a number of corporate entities. But ultimately, this person owned 97% of the business that was down here that was at question. So similar thought process behind the holding companies, wanting to know through the Corporate Transparency Act who is ultimately benefiting from that business, no matter what the structure is that has been set up and filed with the Secretary of State. We have a little quiz inside of Tax 1099 that helps you go through and determine if you are BOI, asking that type of question. Am I exempt from these requirements? Have I been filed paperwork with the Secretary of State? That type of level of question to go through and ask this. I'll show you where this is later when we get into the software. All right, let's talk about some deadlines. So we are approaching the end of 2024. It's mid-November. Actually, it's past mid-November now. Time keeps flying by, but it's past mid-November now. I've been doing these sessions for months, and so I've been kind of saying, well, you still got lots of time to do this first part, but we're running out of time. And so there are really 4 different points to make here. I'm going to have 2 slides. The first point is the catch-up period. This is like catching up all of the businesses that were ever created prior to 2024, which is millions and millions and millions of businesses that are out there. So if I created a business in 1985 and it's still going, it's not an inactive business, and it fits all the other criteria, I need to report that business this year by the end of 2024. So before January 1st, 2025, I need to report any business that was created and registered prior to January 1st of 2024. Going into this year, starting in January 1st of 2024, if I've registered a business this year, then I have 90 calendar days after getting the notification that it was effective to make that registration known. So a couple things can happen here. I could have businesses that I set up in the past, need to register those by the end of the year. I could have businesses that I've set up now, and I need to register those within 90 days. And if you're looking at your calendar and you're saying, well, we registered a business back in February, now it's November, I'm outside the 90 days. What am I supposed to do? What they want you to do is go ahead and do your BOI report as soon as you can. We'll see what penalties are here later, and one of those is a kind of a daily fine that builds up for the length of time that you go without doing the report. Since this is a new requirement, we don't have any experience with penalty notices and what the expectation is, and if there's any grace period or anything that is given. So definitely do your BOI report. If you created and registered a company this year, definitely do your BOI report as soon as you can so that you can get back into the good standing on the BOI report itself. Going into next year, so just a few weeks from now, starting January the 1st, 2025, you're going to have 30 days to register or to create your BOI report after registering your business. So you can see the window is narrowing, right? So I had a whole year to do my businesses that were created before 2024. I've got 90 days for doing a business within 2024 because this is the first year of the process of collecting this information. Starting January 1st, 2025, I'm only going to have 30 days to make this statement, this beneficial ownership information report, if I create a business January 1st, 2025 or later. The fourth bullet point relates to updates or corrections. So let's take those in different categories here. Updates are where something happens within the business that has changed the ownership structure, has changed the structure of the business, has needed to be refiled for some reason due to a change in that beneficial owner information. If I shared the business with my daughter, for example. So I have a business, I created it in 1985. I've done my registration for that. I did my initial report. And then let's say in October of 2024, I brought my daughter on to be a co-owner of the business with me. She's now a 50% owner. I have 30 days from October, whatever date that I did that process, to do an updated beneficial owner information report that shows we are both beneficial owners now. Not just me, but we are both beneficial owners at this point. So I got 30 days to do that. So those are updates. Corrections are just where you find out that you did something wrong on the initial report. The address was wrong. Let's do a very simple example, right? The address was wrong. Maybe I entered my social security number and I transposed 2 digits of this social security number. Didn't realize it because it's easy to do that. But at some point I saw, or it was pointed out to me that that the information was incorrect. I've got 30 days from the date that I realized the information is incorrect to make that correction. And I'll show you where you would indicate that as you go through and you're doing your reporting inside of Tax 1099. All right, so just to flip back real quickly and just kind of go through that at a high level again. Before January 1st, 2024, you've got this year to do your report. During 2024, you've got 90 days. Starting next year, you've got 30 days, and updates and corrections, you have 30 days. So let's talk about the penalties if you don't do the reporting that you're supposed to do. So if your, if your reporting company is qualified and it is responsible for filing a beneficial owner information report, you have to do that within those timeframes. And you can see what the penalties are here for failing to comply that or doing an unauthorized filing. They're pretty significant penalties, up to 2 years of penalty, up to 2 years of prison, and or a fine of up to $10,000. And then the civil penalty of $500 per day. That's where I was talking about. I created a business in February of 2024. I'm outside my 90-day window, but I need to make that registration known through the BOI process as soon as I can. Otherwise, I'm adding on the $500 per day civil penalty. That's not good. The second one here is an unauthorized filing. When we go through the process, I'll show you how you are clicking that you are authorized to file this. And you could be authorized because you own the business. You could be authorized because you are an accountant or an attorney who's working on behalf of a client, and that person, that business has authorized you to do the filing. An unauthorized filing, though, has a fine of up to $250,000 and 5 years of imprisonment. So don't do unauthorized filings, I guess, is the moral of the story for the unauthorized filing component of this. All right, so we're going to go and see how we can do this process, how we can go into Tax 1099 and do the filing. There are some slides here that kind of talk you through what some of the benefits are of filing through Tax 1099, just giving you an ability to gather the beneficial owner information. We'll see how this works in the process, tracking the status, updating and correcting the prior reports. I've talked about how that is necessary to do within 30 days. And then especially if you are, an accountant, an attorney who's working with multiple clients, having them all in one place is a good proposition. You can easily come in and track the status of them and then also see the finished reports themselves. There's also some bulk upload capabilities that you get by using Tax 1099. All right, I'm not going to go through the slides for the step-to-step process here, but do know they are in here. There are some step-to-step slides that kind of walk you through the different steps of the process, but I am going to go in and show you the process itself. So let me bring up Tax 1099. I gotta find the right window. I closed most of my windows, but I still had some open. All right, so this is Tax 1099. Let me make sure I'm still logged in here. All right, so this is Tax 1099. I'm in the modern view. If you've used Tax 1099 before and this looks a little different, that's why. You can go back to the classic view, at least for a few more months now if you want to. Either way, you can do the beneficial owner information reporting. Over on the blue menu over here, I'm going to have a FinCEN BOIR menu option that I can click into. And because I've been doing this webinar for so long, I have some that are already kind of stacked up here. These are not submitted, but they are items that I've done in the past, just going through the process. So let's look at all the different things that I can do here. So first of all, I've got a File BOI button. I'm going to use that in just a minute. I've got the import option here. So this gives me the bulk upload of the BOI information. So you can upload your reporting company, you can upload your beneficial owner information, you can even upload the documentation through that process. And then I mentioned the quiz earlier. This little link here will take you to the quiz that walks you through the kind of high-level steps to know if you need to do a filing. Down here for the ones that I've currently done, I have a view option, I have a trash option, I can delete it, I can edit that, and then I can do my submission. And when I do my submission, that pays for the filing and then puts this into a submitted status, which later will change to an accepted status. Sometimes a rejected status if they need some more information, but usually an accepted status for this once the FinCEN organization has reported back. So if I click the eyeball there, that is the one that lets me see one. And so I'm going to pull one up here. This is one of these draft ones that I've done. And I can just roll through some of the information here. The first thing is a type of filing. When we actually go through the report, creating the report, that won't be the first thing, but it will be part of what we do. But on the report itself, the type of filing is first. That's the initial report. That's the vast majority of what people are going to be doing this year. And then you have the corrections, the updates, and then there's a potential for a company to become newly exempt. As I scroll down the page here, this is my business, the reporting company that I'm filing for. As I scroll down the page a little further, this is my company applicant. We talked about how that is the person who originally did the filing. You can see there's no information included here. We'll talk about why that is in just a minute. And then if I had filled it out completely, there would be the beneficial owner information. So this is only partially completed because of the way that I've been going through and doing these demonstrations. So I'm going to start a new filing. I'm going to click the File BOI button. And I'm just going to pick out one of my companies here. I have a bunch of bills, tax companies. I'm going to pick just any one of them. And I'm going to click Next down here at the bottom of the screen. And it's going to take me into Bill's tax code. So this is the situation, this is the process I follow if I already have the data inside of Tax 1099. So let me go back for a second, because when I created this, I started my BOI process. I also had the button over here to add a new reporting company. So if my company's not in here and I just want to manually enter the data for it, the business name, the TIN, the business address, that type of thing, I can add that new reporting company. But because I've already used Tax 1099 so much in the past, I've got plenty of companies that are already out here. And this is just kind of enabling me to go through an easy process to start this off, kicking it off by having the reporting company listed. All right, let's talk down through some of this information. So I told you you can file this in 5 minutes. It's going to take me longer than that to explain the process and explain what all the fields are. But just know that when you're doing this for real, it won't take as long as it takes me to go through and do the explanation. There is an option up here to request a FinCEN ID. This is the company, the reporting company, FinCEN ID. The FinCEN ID is not something that you will have prior to doing this process for your reporting company. If you check this box, then when FinCEN accepts your BOI report, you will get an email from us that will contain the acceptance and it will contain the FinCEN ID in it. So if you've asked for that company FinCEN ID, then you will get that when the acceptance comes. There's another FinCEN ID that applies to the beneficial owner. We'll talk about that in a minute when we get over there. So I could check that box. The second box here is foreign pooled investment vehicles. If you have one of those, you probably know. I don't, so I'm not going to check that box. And then I've got all my bills, tax company information here. This is pulled over from Tax 1099, but if I didn't have my doing business as, my disregarded entity, I could put that in here as a part. I could put in an email address. I've got my EIN, my business. This is the country and jurisdiction. So United States is the domestic companies. Foreign companies is anything outside of the United States. So if my business was registered in a foreign country, I would need to change this to the foreign country and put in whatever that country was there. It's domestic though, and it is formed according to this in the state of Arkansas. Well, it's formed according to that in the state of Arkansas because down here in my address, this is where I pulled it from Tax 1099 and the payer was in Arkansas. But just because the payer's in Arkansas doesn't necessarily mean that the business itself was formed in Arkansas. There are a lot of corporations that are formed in Delaware or Nevada or anywhere, really. It's certainly possible to have a business location in headquarters in one address and the reporting, the state of formation be somewhere else. So just note that if you're using the Tax 1099 information to bring it over. I've talked about tribal jurisdiction a couple of times, so if that applies, then you would fill in the information there. It's not a foreign reporting company, so I don't do anything there, and I've got my address. So only thing that I changed on this page was my state of formation. I'm going to click next. Oh, sorry. I thought it did that. I'm going to click next. And this is where I'm choosing my initial report, my correction, my update, or my newly exempt. Almost everyone right now is doing initial reports. So I'm going to check that box. When I check that box, I don't have to do anything else on this page. It's giving me the date prepared. It's automatically filling that information in. I don't have to do anything else. If I chose correct or update or newly exempt, I do have to do some other data entry here. But because this is the initial report, the first time I'm doing this, created the business prior to this year, I'm doing an initial report. Even if I created the business this year, it would still be an initial report unless I've had a correction or an update that I need to make. So one box checked here. That's all I'm doing on this page. On the next page, I'm going to do the company applicant information. Now, remember, I said the company applicant is the person who originally filed the paperwork with the Secretary of State or other jurisdiction to create the company. I may not know who that is. So we have an easy out here. The FinCEN has said, if you are reporting a company that was created or registered before January 1st, 2024, again, vast majority of companies registered or created prior to January 1st, 2024, just check this box. And I don't have to do anything else because when I do this and click OK, I disable all of these fields. I'm not having to enter any of this information. Now, if my business was created or registered in 2024, I do need to enter that information. And again, that's the information for the person who was creating the application with the Secretary of State. It could be multiple people, right? You have an add applicant button here, so you can do multiple people in there. That process, if you have to enter that information, is basically just doing the same identity and verification information, putting in a driver's license or a passport for the identity verification. But take a step back again. I'm only checking the one box here because my business was created prior to January 1st, 2024, and I'm doing my initial report. I'm going to click next. And now I'm going into the beneficial owner information. Well, it says no records were found because I haven't created any beneficiary information at this point. So I need to do that. So I've got a button up here that says add new beneficiary owner. I can do one of these because any report that I make is going to have at least one person who is the owner or controller of the business, or I can do as many as I need. I might have a lot of people who are involved in this as a beneficial owner, and I need to do a kind of a multi-level approach to that, asking each one of them for their information. I'm just going to do one. I'm going to click Add New Beneficiary, and then I'm going to scroll down this page here because I just want to show you what all is on this page. I've got the beneficial owner FinCEN ID. This is the second ID that I talked about. If your beneficial owner has a FinCEN ID, they probably won't. You can enter it here. It's not required. Neither of the FinCEN IDs are required to do the reporting as you go through this and do it. It's only if they have proactively gone out as an individual and they've requested a FinCEN ID that you will be able to put the FinCEN ID in here. Putting the FinCEN ID in here prevents you from having to enter the rest of the stuff because the FinCEN ID locates that person and already has that information in the FinCEN database. So they've already got that information if the person has gone through and created a FinCEN ID. But again, most people won't have that at this point in time. I got a full legal name and date of birth. I've got a residential address, and then I've got my form of identification. So it's entirely possible that you have this information either because you are the owner, you're the beneficial owner who's doing this report yourself, or you're an accountant or an attorney and you knew you needed this information. And so you collected this information already. So if you already have this information, you can go in and you can fill it out. If you don't have the information, though, we've created a pretty easy process for you to do the collection. We've got a BOI request information up here. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to put in the name of the person. So I'll just use my name. And then I'm going to put in my email address. So I'm just saying that I don't have the information, but I want Ed to come in and fill this information out. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. You see the add attachment option. I don't have that. I'm just going to click Save Beneficial Owner. And when I do that, it's going to take me back out to my grid here, and it's going to change the status of this to requested. So an email has gone out to my email address to say, hey, come in and do this piece of information, data reporting. So let me show you what that looks like. Give me just a second. I'm going to pause this while I bring everything up here. Sorry, Outlook's not cooperating with me. There we go. All right, let me start up the share again here. So this is the email that I received. Came in from Bill's tax company. It says, hi, Ed Pratt. Bill's tax company wants your assistance in going through and providing your ownership details. Click the link below to go and complete this information. So I've got the link clicked and it's open here. So this is the same information that I saw over on this page when I went in. If I edit that page, I'd be able to see the same type of information request. I'm just going in and I'm adding all of the information. So I've got a driver's license, a state ID card, or US passport. The beneficial owner doesn't have that. A foreign passport can be used. I can go in, I can add that attachment here. I'm just gonna pick something that is not really that. I've got some information in here because remember I put in my name, but I didn't put anything else in there. So let's fill out the rest of the information here. Middle name, I got a suffix, and I got a date of birth. And believe it or not, today's actually my birthday. It's true. I'm going to click next. This is going to be my address. So I'm going to enter my address. This is not my real address. And that is in the United States. And we're going to say Arkansas because that's where our headquarters are. And I know the zip code. And we're going to click next. And so this is the final piece. If I have that FinCEN owner ID, I can enter that information here. I'm going to put in the identification information that I'm going to do, and then I'm going to upload the form and sign it off. I've also got this one checkbox up here. So I just want to point this out. This won't happen very often, but it will happen sometimes if the beneficial owner is a minor child, so they're under the age of 18. I would check this box and I would state that I'm filling it out as the parent of the minor child, and I would include my information down there. So you won't run into that very often, but if you do, that is what that box is for. So I'm going to choose that I'm putting in my, I put in my driver's license is what I'm going to say that I put in there. My country of jurisdiction, United States. The state is, we'll just pick Arkansas. That's not a real invalid license number. And let's say that the expiration date is 2031. And then I can type in my information here. If I just want to click this, it'll let me type the information in. If I'm doing this on a tablet, I can sign it with my finger. If I'm doing it like I'm doing it, I've got to do it with the mouse. And that's always, fun to see what kind of information you actually get there. And then I just click submit and finish. And so I'm done with completing that information. So when I click submit and finish, I'm going to get a copy of the information that I entered. It'll come up here as a PDF that I can download. So I can download this, keep a copy for myself. Over here on the Tax 1099 side, you will be notified and you'll see that you have the beneficial owner information has been completed by your person for Bill's Tax Company here. So if I go back to Bill's Tax Company and I click on edit, and I just kind of run through the process to get to my beneficial owner page. Here I have that information has been completed. I can go in, I can edit it. So if Ed calls up and says, oh, I forgot, I put that address, but I'm moving tomorrow. Can I put the new address in? Sure, put the new address in. And you can go in and you can enter that information so that the new address gets done. Now, though, I've got my beneficial owner. And remember, I could have 10, 12, I could have 2, I could have 1, whatever the number of beneficial owners is applicable, I will have that many. And I'm going to choose those beneficial owners. Here, I just have the one. I'm going to click next, and it's going to take me over to my review page. So this is giving me a review. It's all collapsed here. I've got the reporting company information I can open up and see. I've got the filing information. That's just that initial report. I've got the company applicant. Remember, we didn't fill any company applicant information in because it was prior to January 1st, 2024. And I've got the beneficial owner information here that was filled out by my user. I've got all that information that I just collected. When I click next, it's going to take me here. It's going to allow me to enter my email, confirm it, put in my first name and last name. And this is where I'm checking the box to certify that I am authorized to file this BOIR on behalf of the reporting company. Doesn't have to be the owner of that company, doesn't have to be someone from that company. It just is me stating as an attorney, an accountant, as the administrative person for that company that I have been given the authorization to do that. So let me put my stuff in here. And then I'm going to check the box that says I certify to it. And then I'm going to click the submit button down here. Now, I'm not actually submitting it here. I'm just making it to a status where it is ready to be submitted. I can do the submission through this process by picking whichever package that I want. $45 is the cost for the single form filing for the BOI. There's a grid out on the BOI page that we have on Tax 1099 on the outside that tells you what the different rates are. The lifetime subscription is if I know this business is going to undergo changes and need to be updated on a consistent basis. So I have 10 kids, and every year I'm going to bring a new kid on, or multiple times during a year, I'm going to bring a new kid on. And so that's going to wind up being 11 different filings when I update for each one of the kids. A lifetime subscription is going to be beneficial for me because I'm only going to pay for it one time instead of paying $45 for each one of those filings that I do. Then from this point on, it's just checking out. And then back here, once that is accepted, you'll get the acceptance notice. You'll get an email about that. And then you'll also be able to see the acceptance status over here in the Tax 1099 page. All right, so that was the software, and again, I spent a good bit of time going through that so I could explain all the different fields and what they mean and so forth. But if you've already got information in Tax 1099 for the reporting company, you're really just going through and filling out the beneficial owner information, checking a couple of boxes, and then checking it out at the end of that process. So this is another page that I wanted to bring up and show you. I've got a couple of a couple of account settings. One of these, let me actually just take you here in the software, show you where these are. So in my BOI settings here, I've got a couple of things that that I can turn on. If you are an enterprise user, and that means you're subscribed to the Tax 1099 enterprise license where you can add additional users and kind of give them rights and stuff, you can turn this off. So we had a request from some of our accounting clients who aren't doing it for their clients. They're referring clients to us instead to turn this off. And so we built that little option. I've got an ID expiration reminder here. So I can turn on the ID expiration reminder and I can go through, it'll look like this. It'll say whatever your person's name is. Hey, the ID that you submitted is expiring. You can set this to check monthly, quarterly, half year, every year, whatever you want to do. You can have this email set up to do that. And this is the date of the month that I would send that email reminder. So it might be the 15th of every month that I want to send that reminder to people. Then if there's an update or a change in the BOI information, this is something that clients aren't necessarily keeping track of, but I can send out a reminder, again, monthly, quarterly, half year, or yearly to say, hey, check your ownership information. Has something changed? Did you bring on a partner? Did you go from an S Corp to an LLC or vice versa? Anything that might have changed that is going to require you to do a beneficial owner information report, you've only got 30 days to do that. So let us know if something has changed. And so those emails will go out from Tax 1099, and they will provide your beneficial owners the opportunity to go in and let you know if there are changes that have been made, or proactively give you new identification paperwork when their passport expires or something like that. All right, so that's going to bring us to our question and answer period. So let me bring up any questions that you guys have put in. I've seen a couple that have popped in. Let me get my reading glasses. As you saw, I'm getting older, so I need to be able to read the actual question here. Oh, someone said happy birthday. Thank you. I appreciate that. The question is, how long will we have access to the recording? One question. And the answer to that is, I don't know. I think it's a year that you get access to the recording through Zoom, but we do have a recorded version out on our resources page. I'm 90% sure we have that. Let me go look. So let me log out and go to the home page. Go to my resources. Actually, it might not be in webinars. It might be in my how-tos instead. Sorry, I've got the Zoom question window in my way. We'll open both of them up, see which one it's in. So these are more how to file the tax forms themselves. All right, good to know. And then this is where you signed up for the webinar. So we've got live webinars here, and then we've got past webinars here. So we do have the BOI reporting webinar here. So this will be out there probably forever. Note that one was from July 9th. There's a couple of changes, like the account settings that we have that have been in there. Another question is, how much time is it taking for FinCEN to accept a report once it's been submitted? We've seen a variety of timeframes in that, and we haven't, because it's new this year, we haven't really pinpointed any reason for it. Just kind of back end stuff. It's an XML file that we're sending over, so it should be very easily read by FinCEN in order to do the uploads. I would say as we get closer to the end of the year, it's probably going to take longer because there will be more people who are filing it, like everyone else. People wait till the end of the year, or wait till the end of the deadline to do the filing. So I would expect it to take a little bit longer, but we've been seeing anywhere from 1 day to 2 days to 3 days for the most part. If it's taken longer than a week, reach back out to us and let us know that there is a question about it, and we can check with FinCEN. Then got one more question just now. Is a copy of the driver's license or passport required to be uploaded? And that is a yes. So your beneficial owner needs to upload that information so that you have that in place within the BOI report. And it could be a driver's license or a passport. Another question, are these, can the BOI reports be mailed or are they required to be sent electronically? They are electronic only. There's no paper version of the BOI report that is able to be sent at this time. And I don't think there ever will be. We have paper forms for W-2s and 1099s and so forth because there weren't electronic ways to do it back when they started collecting that type of information return and payroll return information. But the BOI was created during the time when the electronic filing is available. So I don't think there will ever be a paper version of the BOI report that is available. All right, well, that is going to take us to the end of our session here. And if anybody else has another question, I'll hang out for a couple more minutes. Oh, I do see another one there. There's a question, like a confirmation question. If an owner of an LLC who doesn't manage the entity, so they don't have any control, and they own less than 25%, does not have to be listed as a beneficial owner. That is correct, because they're under the ownership threshold and they don't exercise control over the business. So they don't have to be listed as a beneficial owner. So keep the threshold in mind, 25% ownership, and then keep the control aspect in mind as well. There's a question about the LLC. What if it's owned by a trust? So the trust is owned by someone. So it's ultimately going to be the owner of the trust who is going to need to be reported for that. FinCEN has a really good frequently asked questions list there. And that frequently asked questions list on the FinCEN page goes into some of the more particular scenarios like the trusts and so forth. And then somebody asked to show the account settings again. Let me bring that back up. So the account settings are under my information over here. I've got the account settings. I've got a couple of different account settings, but it comes on to BOI at first. And then here is the BOI settings. I've got the ID expiration reminder. That gives me this information. I can set the frequency for the ID information. And then it gives me the reminder email for the update or change in BOI information. And I can set that up on that schedule. And it, again, just shows you what those emails are going to look like when they go through the process. Got another another question about managing multiple companies. So for a bookkeeper, an accountant, an attorney, that type of process, that's what Tax 1099 is created for. We have all of the companies listed here. So these are again, it's a test environment here that I have, but these would be all of my companies that I have. On the BOI side, I can import that information. I can import them just as the companies, and then I can send out those emails. You can see I have 164 different clients that are listed here. So yeah, we've got lots of builds out here for accountants and attorneys and people who have multiple clients. Let's see. There's a question about does the box have a form that gets checked to indicate ownership versus control? And the answer is no, because from FinCEN's perspective, it doesn't matter. You are a beneficial owner if you have either ownership or control. And so that's why they don't have that distinction within that process. Then another question about the charge, it's $45 for, not for the 1099, but for a BOI report. So the pricing page is out here as well. The BOI reporting pricing is actually on the BOI reporting page. So we have all this information here, including somewhere down towards the bottom, it's got the pricing chart that shows you what that looks like based on the various ones. And then our other forms, 1099 pricing and so forth, is over here on our kind of standard pricing page. There's a question, and this is something that There's a question that is about CPAs filing BOI reports. Some potential, I'm going to say not danger, but some potential adverse circumstances that could arise. You as an accountant, you're not a legal advisor, right? So you're not supposed to be providing legal advice. We've heard multiple things. I would check with your insurance company to see what their standpoint is. At some point in time, I would say back in May, AICPA was promoting that accountants could do the beneficial owner information reporting. More recently, they've come out and said, maybe you shouldn't do that. We have clients who are all over the place. We have clients who don't want to do it at all. We have clients who are doing them all for their clients, and then we have other clients who have used this link over here, this become a partner link, where you can create you can create an account, basically a partner account, and you can refer your clients over to us where they can do the filing themselves, but you can receive some compensation for that, for the referral. All right, that takes us to the top of the hour, everyone. Thank you for attending our session today. I appreciate it. Thanks for the questions. I actually did get to all the questions this time, unless somebody puts one in here at the last second. So thank you very much. Have a good rest of your week. Enjoy Thanksgiving next week too. Bye, everyone.